souls to Jesus by the service that I yield.
Have you ever been to a restaurant that had a dress code? A code that required its male patrons to wear a jacket or a dress coat? I've seen it in movies. I've seen it on TV shows where a couple would come up to such a place only to be stopped and told to the gentleman that he must wear a dress coat. And I think this is something that most of us have probably seen in movies or read about in books. And you know, that situation reminds me of a story I heard one time of two friends who took their wives to such a restaurant, and one of the men was casually dressed, and he wasn't wearing a jacket or a blazer or a coat of any kind, but he was dressed nicely. As they approached the door, they were stopped by the maitre d', who informed this gentleman that there was a dress code. Now, as you can imagine, words were exchanged and excuses were made. There was even an attempt at bribery to somehow circumvent these requirements. And after arguing for what seemed like forever, the man made one last attempt to get inside the restaurant. And he wasn't using his best judgment when he said this, because what he said was, "What I'm wearing may be on the casual side, but just to let you know, this outfit probably costs more than you make in a month." He goes on to say that this shirt is imported silk. These trousers, these pants were custom made for me on our last trip to London. These shoes are the latest fashion in Italy. Why, even my socks have real gold thread woven into them. And by the way, that guy you just let in before us, I can tell from here that his jacket came off the rack at some outlet mall. In fact, I'm better dressed than most of the people in this room, regardless of the fact that I don't have a coat. I don't think that discussion went as he expected, because he still wasn't allowed to enter. As they began to walk away, his friend that was with him, who had been there the whole time, said, "I have an extra coat in the car. You can borrow it." Now, once the man had put on the coat, there was no more problem. He had clothed himself in a borrowed coat, and this now allowed him to enter into a place that otherwise was forbidden to him. You see, it wasn't a matter of taste or fashion. It was the expectation of a personal responsibility. To be clear, the patrons of that restaurant were expected to conduct and present themselves in a certain way. No exceptions. It was a matter of surrendering one's own personal desires and preferences in order to gain something that was even better. Many people go through life with a mistaken notion that they can be good enough or kind enough to go to heaven. That these good deeds and these kind words in and of themselves are sufficient to bring about entrance. While being good and kind is necessary if we desire to go to heaven, just being good and kind will not get us there. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21, Paul says, "God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." In his letter to the church at Galatia, Paul even clarifies this statement in Galatians chapter 3, verse 27. He writes, "For all of you who have been baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves in Christ." Did you catch that? You've clothed yourselves in Christ. You've accepted the use of a borrowed righteousness, a borrowed coat, if you will. Because mankind has always had free will. We make choices every day. Some are good choices, but not all of them. Because of our choice to sin, we're lost. We're helpless to save ourselves. It is not within man to save himself. If we are to be saved, then that help must come from a source outside ourselves. We can clothe ourselves in a borrowed righteousness, and it will allow us to enter into a place that otherwise is forbidden.
And I'm bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I